The Objective News Network editorial. Whatever happened to the idea of majority rule in America? As a person who has the utmost respect for our Constitution and the people who are able to meld based on a consensus derived from such divergent interests, a single guiding document that contains such profound principles based on their deep knowledge of history and their vision for a better future for all humankind. No, I'm not saying that the people who wrote our Constitution were perfect men. They were far from that. Some of them accepted the British system of chattel slavery and exploited it. Later, with the westward expansion, Americans literally exterminated the native peoples of our country to steal their land. And in retrospect, I could write volumes on the serious mistakes that have been made to get us where we are today. One of those fundamental principles of our Constitution is that while the majority of citizen voters in our republic rule, the rights of the minority are protected by a system of justice that places each individual's right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness at the very fulcrum of the judicial scale. Let me begin by saying I mean no insult to anyone out there. My only purpose is to raise what I believe are some essential questions about certain trends in our society that appear to be eroding the people's trust in our institutions of government. I believe, like many Americans, that violence, corruption, and the loss of trust in our government comes from the actions of a minority. For example, there exists a segment of our citizens that no longer believe in our Constitution and a single law of the land to guide their conduct. These we call anarchists. There is another segment out there that feels the Constitution is based on the evils of capitalism and must be removed as the guiding instrument of our country and replaced by socialist ideas. These we call socialists. There is another segment that believes the Constitution is outdated and has not kept pace with the changes that are taking place in our society itself. They espouse change and say that our reading of the Constitution must be flexible enough to accommodate their personal views of what society must be. These we call progressive liberals. Then there are the fundamentalists that believe change must be carefully considered in a way that supports the principles of the Constitution with respect for history. This group we label as conservatives. Then there is a last segment of our society out there that do not tolerate the God-given freedom of others and choose to instill fear and hatred and turn to violence to get what they want. These people we call the supremacists. Now, what most members of all of the groups above share is only a superficial knowledge of the Greek, Roman, and Enlightenment thinkers, a remarkable knowledge and the ability of a few highly gifted people to take their knowledge of the history of past governments and apply synthesis and evaluation to go beyond a document that espouses merely a set of processes that must be followed, but also weaves within the very fabric of the document itself a set of enduring human principles. When most people claim they do not believe the Constitution reflects certain changes that have taken place in society, they do not realize that our Constitution actually embraces their personal views of change, but within the context of a set of 28 principles that were crafted with the greatest of care. What is most interesting is that when confronted with these principles, the non-scholars of the Constitution among us are extremely hard-pressed to deny any one of them. You see, the Constitution is a document that was written to bring us closer and closer together as Americans over time to improve the condition of our nation and all of our citizens. We urge you to visit this link to read for yourself the 28 principles of the U.S. Constitution, many of which are as, and sometimes, more relevant than the day they were written into our Constitution. But in the end, there exists out there in America today the single largest segment of them all. We call this segment the majority. The majority welcomes change and different ideas and seeks only civil discourse to achieve each of the 28 principles of the U.S. Constitution for the betterment of their country and all of its citizens. These people do not engage in crimes because it's easy to get away with. They do not riot in the streets so that they can steal. They do not lie and attempt by force or deceit to force their political viewpoints on others by violence, threats, shadow banning, and other forms of coercion. So to all Americans, I say, take heed. It is time for this largest segment of Americans, that is the majority, to stand up and regain control. To do otherwise risks the failure of the greatest and most successful experiment in government that was ever undertaken. It is what it is for March 22nd, 2023. This is John Hnatio reporting for the Objective News Network. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you the next time.